don't know if there's any Whitesnake fans here, but I'm going to rain on your parade if you are. So David Coverdale once sang, I'm not going to sing it, you're welcome, but he sang, "Is this love that I'm feeling?" You remember that song? The answer to that question is no. It's not what he was feeling, because love, at least from the Christian perspective, is not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's a deliberate choice of the will that we make. And that's a very important distinction in our modern day in life, because it's something we need to understand, because Jesus very strongly commands us, this is not just a suggestion, but he commands us to love. And so what does it mean to love? It means to love in the way that he himself has loved you and I. And how did he do that? Well, he died on the cross 2,000 years ago and gave up his body and his blood for us. The truth of the matter is that we have been made for this particular purpose. And he promises that if we follow through with this purpose, we will have the joy of him, and our joy will be complete. And my guess is that for most of us, if not all of us in this church, if I were to ask you, is your joy complete, you would say no. There's things that are still lacking within your own hearts. How do we get to the point where our joy is truly complete? It means we live our life in the way that we have been called to live it and the way we've been designed to live it. When something that is created is not used for its particular purpose, then the joyfulness is gone and it falls into despair. Let me give you an example. Let's say you were looking for a new living room set in your house, and you decided instead of buying a new living room set, you parked your car in the middle of your living room and you used that instead of couches and tables. How would that go? Probably not wonderful, and most of the car would be totally superfluous. The engine would be meaningless, the transmission, the exhaust, everything would be pretty much meaningless except for maybe the uncomfortable chairs that you sit in. The purpose of the car, obviously, is to comfortably and safely transport human beings from point A to point B. And when it's used for that purpose, everything that it was designed to do becomes fully alive, as much as an inanimate object can become alive. Well, in the same way, we are designed as human beings, made in God's image and likeness, for a particular purpose. And when we don't follow that design or that purpose, we fall into despair, and our joy is not complete. Every time we steer away from our purpose, we fall into sin. That's why it leads to despair. So the truth is, when you think about any sin that you want to think about for a moment, when we fall into that particular sin, we are not designed for that. As human beings, we are not designed to become gluttonous and to just eat a bunch of food and engage in a bunch of drink. We're not made for that. We're not made to become drunkards. We're not made to commit adultery. We're not made to commit violence. We're not made to engage in pornography or endless television or entertainment. We're not made to gossip about people. We're not made to do all of these things that we struggle with. That's why we're never fully fulfilled when we do that. Because as human beings made in God's image and likeness, we're made for one purpose, that's to love. That's to be in relationship with God and with each other and with the sake of the church. We're social beings, and when we engage in that particular purpose, then we flourish, then we have meaning, and then our joy is complete. How do we do that? The answer is what Jesus did, as I mentioned. So wherever you're at in your life, the question becomes, are you doing that for those in your life? Are you laying down your life for God and for other people? Or are you living for yourself? So if you're married, the question that Jesus is giving you to reflect upon is, are you doing that for your spouse each and every day, all day long? Are you willing to lay down your life for him or her? If you're a priest like myself, am I doing that for the sake of the parish and Christ's church? If you're in a religious order, are you doing this for your community that you're in? If you're single, are you doing that for your family, your friends, your neighbors, those in your community? Because this is the only way to find complete joy. And the paradox is that it takes death, the death of self, in order to get there. This is the core teaching of Christianity. And again, this is a commandment that Jesus gives to those who follow him. There's a beautiful example of what this means that I learned about recently. I know a nun who has a lot of health issues, and one of the main issues that she has is that she has these horrific migraines to the point where they last weeks, sometimes have gone a month or over a month, and they're so bad. She wears these colossal sunglasses because she can't take in any light, but they're so bad where she sits in her cell, her little room, by herself in the dark. She can't engage in noise or in light, and so she can't eat together with her sisters. She can't pray together with her sisters. She can't do her house job. She can't clean. She can't do literally anything except just stay in her cell in the dark alone. Now, her sisters could receive that in a couple different ways. One way would be to become resentful of her and to say, well, you're really not pulling your weight around here anymore, and so we have to cook more, I have to clean more, I have to do all these types of things. That's one way they could do that. Another way would be to accept her illness, but then just let her be alone by herself. But then a third way, which is what they decided to do as a community, was to take turns, and every nun would take a meal, and they would go into her cell and just eat with her alone in the dark. That's love. That's what Jesus is talking about, where the nuns are realizing, look, this is a need where this is not about me. This is not about my insecurities or what I think is right or what is wrong. I know that someone is in need of something, so I'm going to sacrifice certain things about my life and what I want to do, and instead I'm going to go with her and just be with her in the dark, eating alone, because that at least will give her comfort. And maybe that's not an exciting thing to do or very fun, but I can guarantee you the nuns that do that have their joy completed because they were made for that reason. They were made to lay down their life for each other in that community. So this is the challenge that Jesus gives to us as his followers. Are we willing to lay down our life in love? That's the only way that our joy is going to be complete. So I would encourage you to bring this question to your prayer this week and to say, okay, if I'm married, or if I'm a priest, if I'm single, if I'm working, if I have people working under me, like, am I doing this all the time? And if I'm not, is that maybe the reason why I'm not finding the joy and the completion that I'm seeking? Bring that to prayer and see what the Lord wants to give to you, because the chances are the reality is going to be the answer is no, I'm not doing this as much as I probably should be. But if you're willing to die to yourself and to realize that your life is not about you, but rather is about God and about what he's calling you to do, and you are willing to take that plunge and go in there, you will have joy. You will have a joy that is inexpressible, a joy that nothing out there in the world can give to you, because you were not made for anything out there in the world. You and I are made for the next world to come. And what we do here matters regarding that. So what I'm saying is, I encourage you to die. I talk a lot about death. Someone was telling me that the other day. And I do. I talk a lot about death. But in the Christian life, life is death, and death is life. If you want to live, you have to die. That's it. It is as simple and as complex as that. And that's the only way to joy. So be willing to die. Be willing to deflate your ego and follow the Lord Jesus Christ, who gives us this model and example. That's why we receive the Eucharist, because we receive the very grace of that love and that sacrifice in order to carry out this responsibility. If you're willing to do it, the Lord promises your joy will be complete.